I know, that sounds crazy, right? How on earth could Wilbur leak lore of all things? This must be clickbait. Well, you'd be surprised. I'd tell you to stick around for the full explanation, but honestly, do what you want, no pressure. Anyway, on to my ridiculous claims of, and I kid you not, knowing the script for the Dream SMP. Now, this entire video, the entire premise of that insanely clickbaity title, is based around narrative parallels and the cyclical nature of the SMP's lore. The thing is, with the Dream SMP, themes and arcs get used and reused and reused until you can't say a word without it being connected to 30 other things. And that's a good thing. It's not that the creators are running out of ideas, it's that they're using their pre-established lore to build a base and then tug on those pre-made emotions with new lore. But hey, that's enough literary jabbering. You're here for what the new lore is. So let me tell you. Let's look at Wilbur's stream to start off, shall we? Shall we? Hello? God, a response or like something to show you're actually listening to this would be nice, you know? It's like I'm speaking to absolutely no one and actually recording this days before you hear it, honestly. Anyway, in Wilbur's stream, we basically see him and Tommy visiting Las Nevadas. While Wilbur was dead, Quackity realized, in massive air quotes, that what Wilbur had told him during the election, that violence, steel, iron, blades, that was the only key to true power, to true peace. He realized Wilbur was right, and that was what made Quackity make Las Nevadas. He left a book acknowledging and thanking Wilbur for his insight at Wilbur's grave, and left, thinking nothing more of it. But when Will was revived, he found the book and he took it as an invitation to join Las Nevadas. He took it as a way for him to no longer be an outsider, a way for someone who was being revived, new to the server, who had been shunted around by Tommy for a while, for him to belong. He thought that he was welcome, that he would be let in, because, of course, everyone thought that he had changed, that he was no longer the Wilbur that blew up L'Manberg. Let's rewind for a second, though, to when Quackity first joined the Dream SMP. After being shunted around a bit by Tommy, used and then dropped in a failed drug scheme, Quackity had tried to join L'Manberg. He who was new to the server, he who had talked to Tommy for so long, he who thought he would be let in thanks to an understanding with one of the members, was left out. Wilbur was also left out, gently turned away from Las Nevadas in some sort of cruel revenge by Quackity, who created the almost exact same conditions when he was turning away Wilbur as had been present when he himself was turned away all those months ago, when he himself was told for the first time on the Dream SMP that he couldn't belong. Belonging is the entire motivation of Quackity's character. It's why he created Mexican L'Manberg, it's why he betrayed Schlatt, it's why he created Las Nevadas and manipulated all those people. If he could not belong via peace, he would impose himself, he would belong via force. Quackity intentionally kept Wilbur out for something he could no longer change. The actions of not only Wilbur, but of Tommy and Tubbo and Fundy, the action of excluding Quackity from L'Manberg because he was American, was mirrored by Quackity excluding Wilbur for a fault that wasn't even entirely air quotes his. The metaphor is stretching here, I'll admit, but you get the point. Moving on, let's take a look at what actually happened after Wilbur was turned away by Quackity. To take a better look at this though, we have to look at Quackity's intentions with Las Nevadas. Quackity wanted to make Las Nevadas to belong, as I said earlier, belong through power. But the method through which he would get that power was through money. And that money was going to be gotten through a monopoly. No, not that kind of monopoly. A business kind of monopoly. A monopoly over gambling. There are no other casinos on the server. Every single other empire, every other country has only ever tried to assert their power and show their dominance through brute physical might. The closest a country has ever gotten to not just using sheer force to enforce their will was, quite fittingly as you'll see in a second, L'Manberg, and even then force eventually took over thanks to political instability and revolution. Quackity's entire business, the entire reason Las Nevadas was such an incredible endeavor, was because he was the only place people could go to satisfy an addiction that he forced upon them. There was nowhere else they could go to gamble. Now, let's rewind again and take a look at perhaps the most historic moment of the Dream SMP till date. The one decision that seemed to set the server on the path it's headed down today. The L'Manberg election. Wilbur and Tommy, the POG party if you will, wanted to prove something to the people of L'Manberg. They wanted to prove that they belonged in positions of power. They tried to get to this power, not physical power once again, but a power based on words and societal structures and constructs, by running an election in which they were the only party. An election which they forced upon their citizens and which only they could win, because they planned to be the only party to run. The same way Quackity forced an addiction onto his citizens, they forced an election onto theirs. In the same way Quackity made sure that the result of his forced addiction was a guaranteed win in terms of how he was going to get power, money, the Pog Party did the exact same months before with a monopoly over a single party election, which was a guaranteed win in terms of how they were going to get power. You see where I'm going with this? Because there's more. You may have raised your eyebrow at my last point there because, as we all know, the Pog Party didn't end up running in a one-party election and instead were thwarted by Quackity, no less. Quackity came into the race with a barely established party with no supporting base and no real motive other than to thwart the Pog Party, to thwart their plans to remove their access to guaranteed power. The exact same thing happened with Wilbur and Tommy the other day, and this is what alerted me to the quote marks leak I talked about at the start. Wilbur and Tommy basically did the exact same thing to Quackity, but just analogous to the current situation. They're both next to penniless compared to Quackity, have no pre-established foundation, capital or allies, and formed a nation, as Wilbur called it, with no other reason than to provide competition for Quackity. You can even hear Wilbur say it here, rub it in Quackity's face, that he's doing the same thing that he did all that time ago.
I just feel like, you know, what's the point?
What are you doing?
But you obviously like your money, Big Q, and you of anyone would know, what's the point in capitalism without healthy competition?
Schlatt, who was the leader of the coalition that was later formed by Quackity, was brought back from basically the dead after having been banned. He was never going to come back without an external influence, which is Dream, similar to Wilbur, but this isn't really canon, so I'm not going to be using Dream's involvement at the point here. And thus, he was basically dead. Schlatt was brought back and came there thinking he would help the Pog Party. He was unwhitelisted, if you remember, as an endorsement. And then right after learning a little more about Wilbur and Tommy's plans, he completely went against them, forming a new party to take power. Wilbur did nearly the exact same thing. He was brought back from the dead and had the initial intention to help Quackity, as far as we can tell at least, though it's possible to read into his character from context and say that he wasn't trying to help, and then once he learned more about Las Nevadas and differing from Schlatt, was turned away by the people he sought to help. Wilbur almost immediately went against Quackity's plans, forming a new nation to take power. There are a few more points here, like the fact that during the stream, Tommy and Quackity started getting into negotiations about Tommy joining Las Nevadas after being entranced by the large, flashy buildings, lights, and giant tower. That's what they called it. Giant tower. Anyway, this made Wilbur paranoid about Tommy betraying him. In an eerily similar manner, but again with some glaring differences, Quackity and Wilbur started getting into negotiations during Schlatt's rule, which made Schlatt paranoid about Quackity betraying him. Again, there is a difference in that Tommy's dealings were very publicly known to Wilbur, whereas Quackity's dealings were more private, and it would be disingenuous of me to gloss over that knowingly, so there you go. Finally, there is the fact that while these dealings were going on, Schlatt managed to get Quackity to stay for that much longer. He managed to keep Big Q from abandoning him for as long as he did, using emotional blackmail, with Blatty Patty being a great example of a not so great way that Schlatt degraded Quackity into thinking that his only worth lay in his partnership with Schlatt. And again, in an eerily similar manner, I want to use a different word, but it just works so well. While Tommy and Wilbur and Quackity were arguing over the river that separates Las Nevadas and the new nation that Wilbur was building, the way that Wilbur kept Tommy from leaving was to emotionally blackmail him, first with the claim of family and acceptance and belonging where he had already invested so much, and then with emotional degradation, making Tommy think that his only self-worth lay in his alliance with Wilbur. I mean, just watch this clip.
You're repeating the same tactics, and he's falling for them.
You used
Good
his
job,
hotel.
Wilbur.
The one thing Tommy's tried to do was a failure.
He's just gonna bring you pain. He's just gonna bring you suffering.
Tommy, look at me.
He's gonna bring
The
you
one
all
thing
the
you
same
tried to do
things,
when I was gone, Tommy, was make that hotel, and it failed. It failed. You're in the right place. You're in the right place, Tommy.
Who destroyed L'Manberg, Tommy? Think about that.
Who ran against you? Who laughed as we were exiled?
Think about that
Who
for a
cheered
second,
as
Tommy?
we were thrown out of our nation that we built? We built!
And finally, that brings me to the reason you clicked on this video. Because if you take the mishmash of parallels and narratives that blend Wilbur, Quackity, Schlatt, and mix Tommy and Quackity, you get this prediction of mine, which, knowing my luck, I'll get like 1,000 people calling my theory wrong when it does spoil, but here we go. Anyway, following the theme of Wilbur and Tommy mirroring Schlatt and Quackity, what I think will happen with the server is that with their combined influence, they'll manage to pull the main server members who aren't allied with Las Nevadas away from the casino. Then, with their new business booming and money flowing out like blood from the beating heart of Wilbur's plots, Wilbur will get ambitious and buy out the actual Las Nevadas, taking over ownership of Quackity's old crowning jewel. In this time, however, Wilbur will forget to keep at the incessant task of manipulating Tommy, and this will cause the child to betray Wilbur and become a spy for Quackity inside what remains of Las Nevadas. Thus, when the building part of Las Nevadas is bought out, there's a constant flow of money to Quackity, keeping his resistance alive, money which Tommy is siphoning from Wilbur's incredible wealth to give to Quackity. I also think that Charlie, or Slimesicle, has been set up as a character in such a way that the bond between Quackity and Charlie is similar, if not the same, to that between Wilbur and Fundy. And so I can see Charlie betraying Quackity to work for Wilbur, mirroring that same heartbreak in yet another father-son type duo on the SMP. And finally, I think that Wilbur will reach too high once again, forever the Icarus of the server, and just like Schlatt, slowly all of his allies will leave him, deserting him one by one until he dies once again, in glory or in disgrace, depending on how evil he actually is. If you like this video, I'd recommend this video about some of the hidden meanings in Quackity's lore stream the other day next. It's just like this one, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Subscribe!